When I accepted a night technician job at a remote petroleum depot in Alaska, I thought I'd found peace, a quiet post, decent pay, and solitude. But from the first night, I knew something was off. There were rules, not your normal safety guidelines. These were different, and breaking them didn't mean you get fired. It meant you disappear. The snow may cover your tracks, but it doesn't silence the screams. The first time I saw the place, it was nearly swallowed whole by the fog. The helicopter descended through a thick sheet of clouds, the roar of its blades fighting a losing battle against the howling wind. Below us, a speck of industrial gray emerged from the snowy white, surrounded by vast stretches of nothing. The north slope of Alaska, home to the coldest silences I'd ever known. I was the only new hire on the manifest. The guy who flew me in, a hardened contractor named Wilkins, didn't say much. He just looked at me with eyes like cracked ice and muttered, "Stick to the rules, technician." And not just for OSHA. That should have been my first red flag. The depot itself looked like something out of a forgotten war zone. Half buried in snow, rusted fuel tanks huddled like ancient beasts, and tall floodlights that flickered nervously, even in daylight. It was built in the 70s, supposedly as a backup pumping site for emergency reserves. The kind of place nobody talks about unless something goes wrong. Inside the main admin building, I was handed a thick binder titled Protocol Book Alpha, Night Shift. It wasn't the usual stuff. Sure, the first few pages talked about routine inspections, pressure valve monitoring, and hazard response codes. But by page 10, things turned weird. Rule number 7. If you hear knocking from inside the empty fuel tanks, do not respond. Rule number 12. At 2:13 a.m. precisely, shut off all lights for exactly 1 minute. No more, no less. Rule number 15. If you see someone outside who looks exactly like you, initiate lockdown and hide. Rule number 22. Never go near tank 9. It's decommissioned for a reason. I thought it was a hazing prank at first, a little psychological game to test new hires. But the others didn't laugh when I asked about it. In fact, they avoided eye contact. There were only 5 of us assigned to the night crew. Milo, the shift supervisor, a wiry man with nicotine-stained fingers and eyes that twitched constantly. Camila, the only one close to my age, maybe early 30s, quiet and sharp. Donnie, the big guy with a permanent scowl, who never removed his mirrored sunglasses. Nash, a lanky, skeletal man who talked to himself under his breath and smelled like kerosene. They barely acknowledged me during dinner in the rec hall. The only sound was the buzz of the overhead light and the occasional clatter of metal trays. Any advice? I asked finally, trying to break the tension. Camila looked up from her mashed potatoes. Don't break Rule 12. Ever. That night, I took my first shift alone in the monitoring cabin, an elevated glass room overlooking the depot like a watchtower. It was a clean, insulated space with panels of blinking lights, analog gauges, and a wall of old CRT monitors showing grainy black and white security feeds. The temperature outside was minus 45 degrees Fahrenheit. The wind made the pipes groan. Midnight passed without incident. I busied myself checking pressure levels, logging data, and watching ice form on the corners of the windows. The place felt ancient and forgotten, like we were caretakers of some dying machine. But then, at 2:12 a.m., something changed. All the lights on the security monitors flickered at once, and a loud, shrill tone echoed from the wall-mounted clock. Its red digits blinked. 2:12. 2:13. I remembered rule number 12. With shaky hands, I killed the lights. Darkness swallowed the room instantly. Outside, even the floodlights went black, plunging the entire depot into pure Arctic void. No light, no movement, just silence And then the sound. It started faint, a scraping, dragging noise. Metal on metal. I pressed my ear to the window. It was coming from below, near the storage tanks. Then I saw them. Figures, maybe 3 or 4, barely outlined in the moonlight reflecting off the snow. They moved in an unnatural way, jerky, like broken puppets. One of them crawled on all fours with its back arched and neck twisted 180 degrees. Another walked upright, but staggered, as if drunk or resisting gravity. One figure stood directly under my tower, looking straight up. Even in the dark, I knew it had no face. Exactly 1 minute later, the red digits turned to 214, and I flipped the lights back on. The depot was empty. The snow was undisturbed. The monitors returned to static. I wanted to believe it was sleep deprivation or an illusion caused by stress. But when I opened the logbook, I saw a sticky note stuck to the most recent entry. You did good. Rule 12 obeyed. M. Milo never explained how he knew. The next few nights followed a strange rhythm. I followed the rules obsessively, terrified of what might happen if I didn't. The others treated the list like gospel, reciting specific times, counting footsteps between stations, even turning around 3 times before entering certain doors. Rule number 9, for example, required that we recalibrate the north valve control only when whistling is heard from Tank 4. The first night I heard that eerie tune drifting across the snow, I nearly bolted. But Nash simply grabbed his toolkit and said, "Let's not keep it waiting." The whistling stopped the moment we approached. Tank 4's access hatch was slightly ajar, though it was supposed to be sealed. A black smear stretched from the rim down to the snow like a long, greasy handprint. Nash said nothing. He just tightened the bolts, wiped his gloves on his pants, and walked away. "Don't look inside," he muttered. I didn't. One morning, after a long shift, Camila pulled me aside near the generator shed. Her face looked pale, lips chapped and trembling. She kept glancing at the sky, like expecting it to open. "They're testing you," she said. "Who?" I asked. "This place. The rules. Whatever keeps it running. It needs obedience." I laughed nervously. "So what? The tanks are haunted. The snow's possessed." "No," she whispered. "It's older than that. The depot's just a shell. What's underneath? That's what the rules are for." Before I could ask more, Donnie shouted from across the yard, "Camila, Tank 9's acting up." We both froze. Tank 9 had been sealed for years. The rule book said nothing about repairs or inspections. Just one directive: never go near it. But Donnie wasn't one for rules. By the time we got there, the hatch to Tank 9 was wide open. "Donnie," Milo called. No answer. A cold wind blew out from inside the tank, thick with the smell of sulfur and burnt plastic. The walls were covered in strange symbols, etched deep into the metal like claw marks. Camila covered her mouth. "We have to leave," she said. "Now." But then we heard it, a low voice echoing from inside the tank, mimicking Donnie's voice. "Guys, I fell. I can't feel my legs. Come in, please." Only, it wasn't quite right. The cadence was off, like a recording played backward and then reversed again. Camila turned and ran. I hesitated only a second before following. We didn't see Donnie the rest of that shift. By morning, the hatch was shut again, the symbols gone. Nash said he never saw anything, and Milo refused to log the incident. Camila and I knew better. That night, a new rule had been taped to the inside of the control room door. Rule number 27. If someone enters Tank 9 and comes out again, it's not them. The morning after Donnie vanished in a Tank 9, the depot felt different. Colder, somehow, like the wind had sunk into the metal and bones of the facility itself. We were down a man, but no one said a word. Milo didn't call HQ. Camila kept to herself. Nash muttered under his breath even more than usual, and his eyes, usually unfocused, now stared at shadows like they whispered to him. Only I seemed bothered that a coworker had vanished into a tank that should have been welded shut. But then, at 8:34 p.m., Donnie came back. He walked through the front gate like nothing had happened. His coveralls pristine, not a smudge on them. His mirrored sunglasses were still on, even though the sun had long dipped behind the horizon. His boots didn't crunch the snow. He didn't even leave footprints. Camila and I were in the control room, reviewing pipeline pressure logs, when we saw him on monitor 6. We froze. "That's not Donnie," she whispered, her hand slowly reaching for the emergency shutoff lever. On the screen, he paused outside the admin building, head tilted toward the camera, as if he could see us through it. Then he smiled, just barely. A twitch in the cheek, a curl of the lip. I didn't know Donnie that well, but something about that smile made every hair on my body stand up. We watched him head inside. I heard footsteps on the metal stairs moments later. Heavy, deliberate. He entered the control room casually, like a guy returning from smoke break. "Heard you two were worried about me," he said, grinning. Neither of us spoke. His voice, it was perfect, but hollow, like he'd memorized the tone, but not the meaning. "You were in Tank 9, I finally said. "Yeah," he replied. "Guess I tripped. Took a little nap. You know how it is." Camila's hand inched closer to the emergency flare case bolted to the wall. "You weren't there when we checked," I said. He turned to me, slower than natural. Must have been looking in the wrong place. I glanced at his reflection in the monitor glass. It wasn't quite right. The mirror tint on his sunglasses didn't reflect the room. Just static. Gray, swirling static. "Donnie," Camila said softly. "What was the name of your dog?" He paused, then smiled. "Max." Her face went pale. "Donnie never had a dog," she whispered. Before I could react, she slammed the flare case open, yanked out a torch, and ignited it in one swift movement. The light flared bright orange-red, bathing the room in flickering heat. The thing flinched, but only slightly. "I don't want to hurt you," Camila said. "Just leave. Leave now." It tilted its head, almost amused. Then it said something I still hear in my dreams. "You're already inside, Camila." The temperature dropped so fast the windows frosted over in seconds. Every monitor screen went black. The overhead light popped. Camila swung the flare in wide arcs, keeping it between us and the thing. When the lights came back, just as fast as they'd gone, it was gone. The control room door still hung open. No footsteps in the snow. Nothing. After that night, Camila started writing new rules in a red notebook. Personal rules, not the kind from the binder, but ones she whispered to herself before each shift, like prayers. If it smiles too early, don't answer. If you hear your name and you're alone, stay that way. Don't trust the ones who come back. We weren't just maintaining an old depot anymore. We were keeping something locked in, or maybe keeping something else out. Milo didn't acknowledge what happened. When I asked him if Donnie had been officially marked as deceased, he only said he didn't clock in. That night, rule number 15 took on new weight. If you see someone outside who looks exactly like you, initiate lockdown and hide. The next incident happened 3 nights later. At 1:47 a.m., I was doing a routine walkthrough near the eastern valves when my radio crackled to life. "Jack." It was my voice. Not similar, not approximate. My voice, down to the cadence, the slight rasp from the cold. "You dropped your wrench." I looked down. My wrench was gone. Then I heard it, a clatter behind me. I turned slowly. Someone was standing 10 feet away, just beyond the edge of the floodlight, wearing my exact uniform. Same build, same face, same bloody wrench in their hand. They smiled. Found it. I didn't move. My hand hovered over the radio, fingers trembling. It stepped forward. Don't run, it said. We need you. That's when the floodlight cut out. I bolted. I didn't think. I just ran. Through snow, past tanks, around corners. I could hear behind me. Not stomping, but gliding like ice on ice. I barely made it to the generator room before slamming the door and locking it behind me. I collapsed against the wall, panting, my breath forming clouds in the freezing air. On the other side of the door, it knocked once. Then it whispered, "Don't break the rules." I stayed in there until Camila came looking for me an hour later. We decided to dig deeper. Camila had found an old archive room in the lowest level of the admin building, below the storage room, and past a rusted stairwell no one used anymore. The door was sealed with chains, but Nash had a key. We didn't ask why. The room smelled like dust and ammonia. Boxes were stacked floor to ceiling, some rotted through with time. We found files going back to the 1960s, original construction blueprints, memos, personnel records. But it was the black binder labeled Project EOS that stopped us cold. Inside were handwritten notes, blurred photos, and redacted documents. The earliest entries were dated January 3rd, 1965, marked with Department of Defense seals. One photo showed the depot under construction, but the tanks weren't the focus. In the center of the image was a deep pit, jagged and unnatural, like the earth had torn itself open. Another memo read, "Subject responded to environmental stimuli. Repeated mimicry observed. Request for personnel cloning denied. Recommend complete burial and containment." Then this, rule framework initiated. Subjects respond negatively to erratic behavior. Ritualized patterns confuse tracking mechanisms. Safety lies in repetition. That's what the rules were. Not safety protocols, rituals, behavioral camouflage. Rules weren't for us. They were for it, or them. We weren't employees. We were bait, caretakers of a cage built from routine. We had just finished copying the most disturbing pages when a low hum filled the room. The emergency lights cut on, glowing deep red. An automated voice echoed through the vents. "Unauthorized breach in Tank 9. Lockdown in progress. Please remain calm." Camila looked at me, panic rising. We didn't go near it. "No," I said, heart thudding. But someone or something just came out. We raced upstairs to the control room. Nash was already there, mumbling to himself, scratching something on the window glass with a screwdriver. Milo stood at the main panel, stone-faced. "What's happening?" I asked. He didn't turn. "Tank 9 opened itself," he said. "The monitors all displayed the same thing. Tank 9's hatch, now wide open, steam pouring from it like breath. The snow around it was moving, undulating, like something beneath was shifting. Then something crawled out. Not a person, not even close. It was tall, impossibly so. Its limbs were thin, but elastic, twitching unnaturally. Its head was smooth and featureless, except for a mouth that opened vertically, revealing rows of needle-like teeth. Its skin reflected light like oil, shimmering, shifting between shades of black, violet, and deep red. Behind it, smaller shapes followed. Dozens. "Protocol Zeta," Milo muttered. "Engaging manual override." He slammed a lever down. Alarm screamed. The lights flickered again. Camila grabbed my arm. "They're out. The rules won't work anymore." Back in the rec hall, we barricaded the doors and turned off all lights. Nash sat in the corner whispering over and over. Tank 9 breached. Patterns failed. Not enough order. I finally understood the core idea. The rules were never perfect. They just confused the things, kept them guessing. like staying in rhythm to avoid a predator that hunts by chaos. If the pattern broke, so did the protection, and someone or something had just broken it wide open. Milo handed us all new rule slips, hastily scrawled in pen. Emergency updates. Rule 30. If the thing that looks like Donnie speaks, cover your ears. Rule 31. If the snow starts falling upward, hide immediately. Rule 32. Never pray out loud. It listens. Camila clutched her red notebook like a lifeline. Outside, the sky groaned like ice cracking underweight. Then came the sound, not footsteps, but a wet slithering, metal scraping, pipes moaning in response. Something was moving between the tanks, something that remembered us. There are things under the ice, older than bones, older than gods. We thought the oil we pumped was just fuel for the world. But now I know the truth. The deeper we drilled, the closer we got to something that has always been watching. And last night I saw it blink. The wind howled outside my cabin like it was alive. Not just weather, something angry and hungry clawing across the tundra. I hadn't slept more than an hour since Donnie died. If he even was dead. My brain kept looping his words. The final moment in the boiler room when he screamed, "We're not supposed to wake it up." Then the thing wore his face like it had borrowed his skin. I kept the lights on and the radio close. No signal, no voice, just static. A few times I thought I heard breathing in it. We were 7 technicians left now, out of 12. The rest had gone home, or so Marshall claimed. But there's no way out unless the company sends a chopper. And they hadn't. The skies had been red flagged for days. I started carrying my crowbar everywhere. I slept with it in bed. I didn't care how paranoid I looked anymore. Rule number 4 kept eating away at me. If you hear something call your name from the pump fields after dark, do not respond. It is not your friend. But what if it sounded like Donnie? What if it was Donnie? That morning, we found footprints, bare ones, leading from the old wellhead to the edge of the diesel storage tanks. The tracks stopped suddenly, as if the person had been lifted into the sky. Marshall gathered us in the break room. The air was stale and thick with the scent of sweat and diesel fumes. "We stay calm," he said. "Everyone sticks to their shifts. No one strays. Maintenance crew A is headed to the north valve line. There's been a pressure spike. Technician Dawson, you're with them." I raised my hand. "Marshall, we need to shut the site down. We've already lost 5 people." "We haven't lost anyone," he snapped. "People left. The rules are in place for a reason. You follow them, you live. That's not how rules work. That's not how this place works." I glared at him. Donnie didn't leave. I saw what took him. Marshall's eyes narrowed, then softened in a way I didn't like. "Maybe you're overworked, Dawson. Stress does things to the brain." Stress didn't create claw marks on Donnie's door, or eyeless shadows that moved when the lights went out. Still, I kept quiet. I knew Marshall wouldn't listen. I joined the crew heading to the north valve line. Me, Carla, and Vince. Vince had barely spoken since we found the tracks. Carla looked strung out, jittery. She kept fiddling with the pressure monitor on her belt. We trudged through the snow on foot. The ATVs had frozen over again. The sun hung low and red in the sky like a bleeding eye. The pipelines stretched into the white distance like the ribs of some ancient, buried beast. "You hear that?" Carla asked, stopping. Vince and I paused. At first, I didn't notice it. But then, there it was. Dripping, rhythmic, wet, like something leaking or breathing. "It's coming from the east vent," I said, motioning towards squat, black exhaust stack half sunk in the snow. We approached carefully. The air around the vent was warm. Steam pulsed upward in slow exhales. Something about that made my stomach churn. Carla tapped her gauge. "Pressure levels are normal, but there's no reason for this much heat." Vince leaned closer. Maybe the backup generator's leaking heat into the pipeline. And then he froze, mouth open, staring straight down into the vent. I moved beside him. There was something in the shaft. About 10 feet down, embedded into the metal walls, were fingernails. Human, some bloody, some torn off entirely. Below them, gouges, scratches, like something had tried to climb out. Jesus Christ, Carla whispered. What the hell happened here? We didn't speak again until we got back to the depot. That night, rule number 7 made its first appearance. Rule number 7. If the oil starts to hum, cover your ears and run. It had been freshly printed, taped to the walls. The ink still wet, but no one saw who posted it. I was lying in my bunk around 2 a.m. when it began. A low, guttural hum. It vibrated through the pipes, into the walls, into my bones. Like a chant with no language. I pressed my hands to my ears, but I still heard it. In my head, like a voice behind my eyes. I stumbled out of my cabin. All the lights in the hallway had gone red. Emergency mode. The others were in the corridor. Carla, Vince, even Marshall. All of them clutching their heads. Marshall looked like he was bleeding from his nose. It's coming from the central tank. Carla screamed. I don't know why I ran toward it. Curiosity? Stupidity? Or maybe it was calling me. The central tank sat like a bloated steel tumor in the middle of the compound. It held the most unprocessed crude, black as tar and thick as blood. The hum grew louder the closer I got. I climbed the access ladder. When I looked inside, I wished I'd gouged my own eyes out. The surface of the oil was moving, not rippling, shifting, like it had shape and thought. Faces emerged, screaming, melting faces. Some I recognized. Donnie, Kyle, even Susan, the medic who vanished last month. They mouthed words I couldn't hear. The oil blinked, and then I fell, not into the tank, into something deeper, into memory or madness. I was standing in a cavern. No, floating inside it. Walls made of flesh and bone and dripping rock. There were voices all around me, chanting, moaning. You pulled it from the deep. Now it wants out. We were the first to drill. We were the first to die. It sleeps beneath the Arctic crust, but not forever. I snapped awake in the snow. Carla was slapping my face. You stopped breathing, she cried. You were out for 5 minutes. I coughed black fluid onto the ice. It stank like petroleum and rot. Something had tried to get inside me. We staggered back to the main cabin. Marshall was gone. His quarters were open, doors swinging in the wind. Inside, the word feed was carved over and over into the walls, into the mirror, even into his skin. We found later, peeled back and tacked to the desk chair. He'd left rule number 8 behind. Rule number 8. If someone starts worshiping the oil, do not let them speak. We burned his body that night, but we weren't sure it had been enough. Carla wanted to flee. Vince said the generators wouldn't last more than another day. We were down to 3. That's when we heard the whispers coming through the intercom. None of us had turned it on. At first, it was garbled, static mixed with wet squelches. Then words. You're almost ready. You've tasted it. You've seen it. You carry it now. Your blood isn't yours anymore. We unplugged every speaker, smashed them, but the voices never stopped. Sometimes they came from inside the walls, from inside our own thoughts. That night, I looked at the oil samples under the lab microscope. They were moving. The crude itself was alive. Not bacterial movement, not contamination. It was trying to shape itself into patterns, symbols. I saw something form that looked like an eye, a spiral, a jawline with teeth that didn't end. And then, right before the slide shattered, the oil arranged itself into 3 words. Bring it up. I told Carla and Vince what I'd seen. They didn't doubt me. We stayed awake till dawn, armed, staring into the darkness. afraid to blink. At 3:17 a.m., the drilling rigs started up on their own. They told us the rules would keep us safe, that if we followed them, the oil wouldn't notice us, wouldn't take us. But now the drills are moving on their own. The ground beneath us is bleeding, and the rules, they weren't safeguards. They were sacrifices. The drilling rigs have been locked. I know that for a fact. I was the one who sealed them. And yet, at 3:17 a.m. sharp, every single one ignited like someone had flipped a switch from the bottom of hell. They rumbled across the compound, massive steel arms dipping deep into the permafrost. The sound wasn't mechanical anymore. It was guttural, like some great creature breathing through metal lungs. Carla grabbed my arm. We shut them off now, or we die. Whatever it is, whatever's down there, it wants out. I know, I whispered. It's not just in the oil anymore. It's in us. Vince stood motionless by the window, eyes wide. It's singing to me. We spun around. His nose bled freely, and he was smiling, like a child seeing a long-lost friend. It says I can go home. All I have to do is open the pressure valves. Don't you damn move, Carla said, drawing the flare gun. But Vince didn't even flinch. He pressed a hand to the glass. Outside, the snow swirled in strange patterns, like it was trying to write symbols into the air. Spirals, eyes, claws. Then he whispered, Rule 9. We both froze. What? I asked. Vince turned, eyes dark with something that didn't belong to him anymore. It told me about Rule 9, the one Marshall never printed, the one they made him forget. Vince don't. He opened his mouth, and the oil came out. Thick, black sludge poured from his throat, gurgling like a newborn gasping its first breath. He collapsed, body twitching, eyes still open, staring at the ceiling as if watching something descend. I rushed to him, but Carla pulled me back. Don't touch him. We watched in stunned silence as the black slick slithered from his mouth, forming lines across the floor letters. One word, offering. We burned Vince too. It felt wrong, but we didn't know what else to do. We spent the rest of the night barricading the doors and manually disabling the closest drills. Each one screeched like it didn't want to die. By dawn, the air was heavy, pressurized like we were living inside a sealed jar. Then we found a new rule posted to the compound gates. Rule number 9. If one of you begins to speak in tongues, you must cut out their tongue. Do not wait. Do not hesitate. It wasn't in Marshall's handwriting. It was written in crude oil. We didn't talk for a long time after that. There wasn't anything left to say. Later that day, Carla showed me something she'd been hiding. She had copied the original blueprints of the drilling site. Not the sanitized versions the company had distributed, but the actual maps, buried deep in a corrupted server. You see this? She pointed to a blocked-out quadrant labeled Z13. They drilled here first, in 1986. Then they sealed it, redacted every mention of it from internal logs. Why? She hesitated. Because it wasn't a well. It was a breach. A breach of what? Her face went pale. A cavern. They hit something under the crust, organic matter, fossilized tissue, but it was still moving. I thought back to the microscopic patterns in the oil, to the faces I'd seen in the tank. They found a living entity, I said. A conscious organism in the shale. No, an imprisoned one. That night, the screaming started. It wasn't human. Or maybe it was once. It came from below, from the very belly of the depot. We armed ourselves. Flare guns, hatchets, anything not bolted down, and made our way toward the sub-basement. That's when we saw it. The hatch to Z13. It hadn't been visible before. A blast door buried under layers of concrete, now cracked open like something had pushed its way out. The edges were scorched black. Inside, the walls pulsed with heat. It smelled like burning hair and gasoline. We descended the steps, each one colder than the last. The screaming grew louder, then stopped. We entered a chamber roughly the size of a gymnasium. Rusted steel beams, shattered containment glass, and in the center, a pit. It wasn't a hole in the ground. It was alive. The edges writhed. The pit pulsed like a heart. Carla shined her flashlight into it. The beam vanished like it had been swallowed. Then we heard voices. Our voices, echoing back at us. Words we'd never said. Bring me up. You belong to the black. The rules weren't made for you. They were made for it. Suddenly the pit burst upward, vomiting oil and bone fragments and something else. Something with arms, but no head. Its skin was stretched like it had once worn a human face, now peeled clean. It lunged for Carla. She fired the flare gun. The creature ignited, screeching with a sound that shattered the overhead lights. It thrashed and collapsed, but the pit didn't close. It grew. We ran, back into the corridor, up the metal stairs two at a time. But something followed. Not the creature. Not exactly. The oil itself. It moved like a flood, but faster. Intelligent. Crawling along walls and ceilings, forming eyes and teeth that snapped and gnashed. I slammed the sub-basement hatch closed and welded it shut. For now it held. But we knew it wouldn't hold for long. 2 days later, there are only two of us left. Me and Carla. We barely speak. We monitor the gauges, but the readings are gibberish now. Pressure is spiking in directions that shouldn't exist. The oil thinks. It learns. And it knows we're trying to stop it. Tonight, the power flickered. Then the final rule appeared on every monitor in the depot. Not typed, etched, as if carved into the pixels by invisible claws. Rule number 10. When it finally asks for your name, do not give it, even if it uses your mother's voice. We both stare at the screen. I whispered, "What happens if we break it?" Carla didn't answer. She was already packing what little gear we had. We leave tonight. We follow the old maintenance trail east. There's a relay station 30 miles out. We won't make it in the dark. Then we don't wait for light. We suited up, bundled tight, and left behind everything. The depot, the drills, even the rules. Though they seem to follow us, burned into our minds. I looked back once, just before the horizon swallowed the depot. I swear I saw a blink. They said the rules were our salvation. But now the drills are silent, the ground trembles, and the black beneath the ice has found its voice. We try to run, we try to fight, but you can't run from something that lives in your blood and remembers your name. We didn't speak for the first few miles. The snow swallowed our words, and the wind howled like it knew our fears. The maintenance trail east of the depot hadn't been used in decades, and it showed cracked steel grates, collapsed beams, and a skeletal framework stretching into a vast white void. The relay station was still 30 miles away, and the cold was already burrowing into our bones. Carla trudged ahead, compass in hand. Her breath formed thick clouds, eyes sunken with exhaustion. I follow behind, flashlights sweeping the empty dark, but every now and then, I catch a flicker in the corner of my vision. A shape, moving just outside the edge of the beam, and the snow wasn't falling right anymore. It was floating in loops, curling like tendrils, like oil pretending to be snow. At mile 6, we found the first outpost. It was a small radio shack, long abandoned, the door hanging by one hinge. Inside, we found a single desk, dust choke controls, and a recording reel still spinning on loop. We played it. The oil is not from this earth. It doesn't burn right, doesn't freeze right. It speaks in memory. It sings in blood. The voice paused, then continued in a whisper. If you've seen the eyes in the tank, it's too late. You're already part of it. The reel snapped mid-sentence. We didn't speak. We couldn't, because we had seen the eyes. We had heard the tank sing, and Carla had something else to show me. As we rested, she unwrapped her scarf and exposed her neck. Her veins had turned black. "Started this morning," she said softly. "It doesn't hurt, but I can feel it watching." "What do you mean?" She closed her eyes. "It sees what I see. I dream in the dark now, dreams that aren't mine." I looked at her with a growing chill that had nothing to do with the cold. "How much time do you think you have?" She didn't answer. We kept moving. Around mile 11, the wind died. Just stopped. The silence was worse. It pressed against our eardrums like we were underwater. And then we found them. A circle of workers, at least a dozen, frozen solid, half buried in the snow, all wearing the same depot uniforms, all standing upright, like they'd been placed there, eyes frozen wide, mouths slightly open. Every one of them was us. Clones, replicas, from our boots to our faces, perfect copies. I walked up to the one that looked exactly like Carla. It blinked. She grabbed my shoulder. "Keep walking. Don't break line of sight." We passed the doppelgangers without looking back, but I swear I could hear our own voices whispering behind us, asking, begging, "Give us your names." Night fell harder the deeper we went. By mile 15, the stars disappeared. The sky turned oily black. The moon dripped like candle wax, and the ground began to tremble beneath our feet. That's when the world changed. One moment, we were walking through snow. The next, we were inside the depot again. Only it was wrong. The walls bled. The corridors stretched forever. And the rules were scrawled across every surface in a dozen languages, all rewritten in black sludge. Do not answer the door if it knocks twice. If you hear your own voice, run. Never turn off the generator after midnight. All rules we'd never seen before. We weren't in the real world anymore. We were in its memory. The oil wasn't just alive. It dreamed. We were walking through its dream. Carla collapsed at mile 19. Her eyes rolled back. Black tears streamed down her face. "It's inside the relay," she whispered. "It knows we're trying to call for help." I held her, helpless. Then she looked up at me, and for the first time, I realized it wasn't Carla anymore. Not entirely. She smiled, but not like her. Like it. Then she said, in my mother's voice, "What's your name, sweetheart?" I froze. She tilted her head. "Come on, say it. You've forgotten, haven't you? Let me remind you. You were born screaming, covered in blood. The first time the blacks saw you." I backed away. She followed. "You don't belong to the world above. You never did. You were born here, in the dark." I remembered rule number 10. When it finally asks for your name, do not give it, even if it uses your mother's voice. I ran, through the snow, through the black, through the memories. It followed, wearing Carla's face, wearing my face. Voices whispered from the ground. Shapes formed in the trees, all begging, "Say your name, say your name, say your name." But I didn't. Even when my father's voice called out, even when it sounded like every loved one I'd ever known, I didn't say it. At mile 28, the world cracked. Not physically, reality cracked. The ground fell away. The sky bent sideways. The snow turned to liquid and burned up into the air. And then I saw it, the thing in the pit. It had no form, only eyes. Thousands of them, each one filled with memory, grief, hunger. It opened a mouth made of rigged beams and human limbs. And it spoke. You were the offering. All of you. The rules were not protection. They were ritual. Each obeyed rule a blood vow. Each broken one a punishment. You kept me alive. Every night you followed them. You fed me. I was falling into it, dragged not by gravity, but by guilt, by understanding. We hadn't survived because of the rules. We'd survived because we obeyed the thing that made them. It had taught us how to worship it. I hit the floor of the relay station, gasping. Snow. Real snow. The lights flickered overhead. I was back. The black was gone. And Carla. She was beside me. Pale. Barely conscious. But alive. We stumbled inside and fired up the radio system manually. Ancient dials. Cracked knobs. Static. And a voice. This is Flight Ops Anchorage. Identify your location. I pressed the transmitter. My hand hovered over the button, trembling. If I said my name, would it hear me? Then Carla, her voice barely a whisper, reached for the mic. 2 survivors. Petroleum Depot 37. We followed the rules. Please come quickly. There was a pause. Then silence. Then, we received your message. But that site was decommissioned in 1987. There haven't been any staff there for over 30 years. Who am I speaking with? The mic hissed. The lights died. The snow outside stopped moving. And I heard my name, spoken in my voice, from the mic. They found us 5 days later. Frozen. Delirious. We were both hospitalized in Anchorage for hypothermia and mental distress. But they never found the depot. Coordinates we gave them led to nothing. No structure, no drills, no gate, just untouched ice. Carla never spoke again. And me? I still hear it. Every night, just before sleep takes me, I hear the hum of the rig, the rhythm of the pump. And sometimes, when I dream, I'm not in my body anymore. I'm in the oil. And I remember every name I've ever heard. One day, you'll speak yours, and I'll be listening.